Welcome, everybody. This is Beer Guys Radio. We're live. It's Hump Day Wednesday. This is how we do it. Guys, I had a terrible week last week, and this week's going crappy as well. Sometimes those things happen, but I'm ready for a beer, and I saved this to pop on air when we went live, but I went to the beer store today, and I got this Guler Lager. We talked today about the proper pronunciation of that's called an umlaut, right?
Yeah,
Isn't
it's
the
an
two
umlaut,
dots an
yeah.
umlaut? So,
Guler.
but in all honesty, I bought this one because I thought the bottle looked cool. I looked it up on Tapped, and it didn't have a great rating, like a 3.5 or something like that. But I figured, what the heck, let's give it a shot. So I'm gonna pop it here. Let's see if we can get a nice. I like these bottles. There we go.
The swing tops
That's
are
a
great.
good one.
That sounded nice, didn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, here we go. Let me get this.
Oh, you
poured
got a
over
foamer.
here.
I have
Probably.
found
There
that
we go.
these kind of beers that are more traditional always have what look like mediocre ratings, and they still can be very good. Like you may drink that, and I'm like, dude, that should be 4 or more. And because it is what it is, because it's not exciting, people give it lower ratings.
Right.
You know the stuff where people check in stuff on Untapped and they say, "Oh yeah, if this were a hazy IPA or my top rating for any kind of lager is 3.5." I'm like, that might be the highest rating they would ever give a lager, So
Yeah, that's a good point. Good point.
Yeah.
Let's say some hellos to our friends, Steve and Pete. Always good to see you, sir. Thanks for stopping in and hanging out with us. We've got Cheers to Beers. They're running around doing a little side hustle in Hilton Head Island. So they said, catch the pod. Good deal. I hope you enjoy it. Mercy Beers, good evening to you. Thank you so much for coming and hanging with us. We're just getting, or I'm just getting some beer poured right now. But Brian, back to your point. That's a good point because I've had some phenomenal lagers that the Untapped militia, whatever you want to call them, consortium, just weren't big fans of, but they were really good beers. And I think they just didn't. So let me get into this. Let's see what we've got here. But I got this and a couple more to get into. Man, I like bottles. And I know they're not cool, like the large format. Brian, there you go. Little Anchor in a bottle. But especially the large format bottles, they're just not as cool as they once were for beer, especially American craft beer. And this past weekend, we opened up like some brewery beers and the big 750s. I just really love the, as they say, pomp and circumstance, I guess, with it, the whole event of it. But anyhow, guys, this got a nice head on it, a nice golden copper hue to it. And cheers, guys. Happy Wednesday.
Cheers. Yeah.
Cheers.
Let me
Happy
drink
Wednesday.
too. I got to say that Anchor Steam is just a beautiful beer, color wise.
Yeah.
And if you haven't had one in a while, and we're similar colors.
We're close in the color there, huh?
Yeah.
This is okay.
Okay.
This is okay. So yeah, it's I would like a little more. And I don't know. I think it said it was a Helles lager. It's just called lager here, but I think it was in Untapped as a Helles lager.
It looks like that brewery was
this'll
founded
be
in
fine.
1514.
Yes.
So
Yeah. That's what I was looking at.
The Guler family, Guler.
Guler.
Yeah, hard to say that.
My German. I didn't take any
qualified.
German in school.
I did, but I don't think it helped because
Many years ago.
I've thought I've known how to say things, only to find out when you look at the pronunciations on YouTube that actual native speakers do. I'm like, oh, I'm not even close. I'm like, wait a minute, they lied to me on how to pronounce things. And my theory is if you take it in school, they're focusing on getting you understandable, in the theory that as you get better at it, you'll get more accurate in terms of pronunciation. Right. Yeah. Like the bare minimum is, can you say something that somebody in Germany would understand, and you get your beer or you get your hotel room or whatever, and not murdered or something like that, or left out in the street, that sort of thing. So
that's a good point.
The priorities are, it's smart, but also it gives you, what's that thing where when you don't know very much, you think you know a lot, but as you get to know more, you realize you don't know anything at all. And there's a whole principle behind that, like something of the novice fallacy or something like that. So here I thought I'd taken a semester and a half of German. I'm like, I know how to pronounce German words if I see them. No, not even a little bit. No, I'm an idiot. So
Another thing that happens, or at least it did for me taking a foreign language, I took a couple years of Spanish, and anytime I see a foreign language, I want to pronounce it like the way the Spanish pronunciation of the alphabet. And that's not right. You can't apply that to all languages. So
no, yeah.
Have you guys ever seen the guy on YouTube? He goes by like Xiaomai NYC, but he speaks like 100 languages or whatever.
Is it that white kid that speaks a bunch
Yeah.
of different languages? Yeah.
Yeah. So his thing is he'll go around and he'll stop in like a restaurant, a Chinese restaurant, an Indian restaurant. He'll go to an African clothing store and he speaks all these languages. And apparently he's done it so much that like within a couple of months of learning, he can pick it up like conversationally, I guess. But he'll go into places and start talking to them in English and then switch over to their native language. And it's amazing to me the way people's demeanor changes when he starts speaking their language. He gets free stuff all the time, and they just get so excited and happy and stuff. Pretty cool. But anyhow, we digress, or at least I do. But all right, y'all, we're going to roll into it. We got a lot of cool stuff to talk about this week. So some updates to some stories from last week and some new stuff happening. But we are going to get into some podcasts right now. Let me get down here. I got to get my intro music so we can rock and roll. And we are going to do just that. I wish I knew. I don't like the new buttons on our streaming platform because I disagree with the way they identify whether or not they're on. I don't
the wrong colors.
Yeah. I don't like that. I'll have to provide that feedback because I'm not really sure whether or not this is on, or it's looping the background music. So if the background music plays and then just goes again, then apparently it was the wrong setting. So I'll fix it and we'll have to redo it. But here we go, guys. Let's go. Welcome to the Beer Guys Radio Show. We are glad to have you joining us this week. We've got a lot of beer topics to talk about. There's a lot going on out there, Brian. There is a lot going on. So, we're going to dive into it. Updates to last week's stories. The Anchor Brewing story continues to develop. So we're going to give you an update of what we know right there. And we'll keep an eye on that one. But I'm Tim Dennis. Brian Hewitt, how the heck are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Like you said, we're going to get into that Anchor Brewing story as it continues to develop. We got some stuff about beer festivals and yeast genes and a bunch of other stuff. And also we have Mo Mike Nate. How's it going, Mo Mike?
Going well. I'm looking forward to talking about beer cocktails with you guys, but also just the regular beer talk.
Beer and beer cocktails, all the hot topics there. Speaking of cocktails, though, we got together, the whole BGR squad this weekend, and we shot some videos. We're calling it Mo Mike Nate's Cocktail Corner, or Nate's Cocktail Corner.
I think just Nate's Cocktail Corner.
Yeah, so Nate's Cocktail Corner, but we're going to be putting out some videos with some of our favorite recipes on cocktails and beer cocktails there. And I think we used a Shiner Ruby Red. Is that what it's called, Nate? Shiner Ruby Red in one of the cocktails. And then we had a Guinness Stout that was it the coffee stout, the espresso stout?
Nope, just the regular draft.
Just the regular Guinness draft.
With an espresso martini. But
keep an eye out for those. They'll be released over the next probably couple of months. We'll send them out little by little.
Of course.
Yeah. Here we go. A little bit. We got to do our editing and put some fancy stuff in there, a little bit of music. Touch up Nate's face a little bit, so it has to be done. Brian, big. What's that?
I said we need makeup for Nate.
We do.
So,
powder him. Powder his nose. That's it. Well, Brian, some big news today, or not today, but this week from the Brewers Association. We all know things are slowing down in craft beer. We've seen our breweries closing. We know that there's a ton of breweries out there. Not to say that there isn't room. I was talking with someone else about these slowdown and brewery closures and that. And I don't remember exactly how it got to it, but the comment was made, there's always room for good beer. And I would say that's accurate, that even in a flooded market or anything, you look at it and there's still room for good beer out there, that someone could be successful. I would say that if you're going to start a brewery right now, you better be pretty sure that your product is stellar. or you've got to have something in your business plan to get it, because it's a tough time right now. Breweries are closing. There is a lot of beer out there, and there's a lot of good beer out there. So if you don't come onto the scene 110%, I think it's a bad call to make that move. But on that note, Bart Watson, who is the chief economist at the Brewers Association, tweeted some numbers, and he said that quarterly new permit numbers were down in Q2 to just 650. He noted that is down from a high of nearly 1,800 in Q3 of 2017. And I don't have the chart handy right now, Brian, but the line continued to trend down there. It's been trending down for a little while and down to just 650. But you think about it, even 650 permits in Q2, that's still a lot of breweries that are planning on opening up. So
for sure. Yeah. And he even said they're still interested in opening new breweries. People do think that they have that game changer beer. And somebody out there probably does have a game changer of a beer in their head that they're looking to bring to market. So people are still interested in doing it. And I'm happy about that. Just not as many people.
Right, exactly. So if you've got great beer, bring it to us. We'll drink it. Put it out there, and we would definitely love to have more good beer. But it's something that it's something we've talked about here locally in Georgia in 2017 when we got the right for direct sales. A lot of breweries started just hammering beer releases, and I'd made the comment on a forum, and I think I've talked about it on the show before. But I made the comment, it was too much. And I was like, and my point was, yeah, I love having all these new beers, but you're going to get the cry wolf syndrome there. If you've got new beers that you're putting out on social and you're talking about twice a week or even every week, it's going to get to a point where people just become kind of deaf to that. They don't get excited about it because they know that the beer is going to come, another one's going to come around next week. So if they miss this one, they'll catch that one. We've seen it with some national releases, Brian, that one we had chased in the past and still really enjoy. And to be honest, I just reminded myself I'd like to get some. But Westbrook's Mexican Cake, Mexican Imperial Stout that releases here, that released not long ago to absolute zero fanfare. And say 5 years ago, when that released, there were threads on the local beer boards telling everybody who still had it in stock in that. And, we just don't see it. We got together this weekend. We enjoyed a Black Tuesday from the brewery. 5-6 years ago, they did an online sell of those beers. And if you weren't there in the first 2 to 3 minutes, you weren't going to get any. Now, for several days after the release date, they're talking about only a little bit left, come get it. And it's possible they're just making more of it or they have more of it, but I'm sure that it's also that you can go out a lot of places and get you an Imperial Stout that's going to be delicious. Most any place is going to have one locally that you can get. So Black Tuesday isn't as rare as it was. I mean, Black Tuesday is still something special, very boozy. I think it was 18.9 this year, Brian, 18.2.
Yeah, in the neighborhood of 18.9, 19.3, 19.2. Yeah, it was in there. It wasn't as boozy as it's been in the past, but yeah, it's the scarcity is greatly diminished. So as things become less scarce, they become less valuable too, or less sought after, which is really I think the economic way of describing the shelfie syndrome. Once it sits on the shelf for a while, it's perceived to have no value anymore for some reason. So I still buy the Mexican Cake when I see it. The problem is, or the benefit, still comes in 22-ounce bottles. Love that, but
750, right? No, Mexican Cake. Sorry, I was still thinking Black Tuesday.
Yeah,
okay.
That's a 750. Yeah, the Mexican Cake. I still buy it when I see it on the shelf, and it doesn't sit on the shelf forever, but it sits for a while. And the thing, the problem with that is, and the benefit, 22-ounce bottle. Love that format. Got to open it with friends though. Like
you do.
I have a Black Butte 35 that comes in like slightly less than a 12-ounce bottle. I've been getting into those because, well, also on the shelf, something I used to chase, and it's 12 ounces. I can drink that. I can handle that. I mean, it's a lot, but I can handle that. I'm a big boy, so
you can do it.
Yeah, I can do it.
You got to believe in yourself, Brian.
I do.
You got this.
Talking about those big beers, like 18, 19 percenters. And here in Georgia, we don't see anything on the shelf over 14%. We've got a limit here. We can't see anything over that. We've talked about like the Avery Stouts. They do some that are just a little above that 14.6 or what have you. But I had got into a discussion earlier this week, and we were thinking back to kind of the trendy drinks in your early drinking days. I would say high school, but we know that's not true because you're not allowed to drink at that age. But let's say right at 21. And there was a drink that I mentioned that a lot of people had never even heard of, didn't even know it existed. But I was in Arkansas at the time, and there was a drink called Purple Passion. Do either of you know of Purple Passion?
I only know it because you've mentioned it. I knew you were going to say it because you've brought it up before.
Yeah. So. But Purple Passion, it came in, I think, like 12-ounce 4-packs or a 2-liter, looked just like a soda bottle, like a 2-liter soda bottle. But it was essentially like grape Kool-Aid with Everclear. And this was a package. This was a packaged drink. And they also had, I think, Tropical Passion and maybe Peach Passion were other flavors that they had. But that was the cool drink at the time. And a lot of the girls loved it. They would go, the trick was you'd go to Sonic and you get a large cup of ice and you get your 2-liter of your Purple Passion. And it was you were ready to party. You drive out in the country. We did a lot of bonfire pallet parties there. So you'd go out there, and there was another drink called Cisco, Cisco. Do either of you know of that one?
No,
I don't think so. No.
So that was in the family of like Mad Dog 2020. It was a fortified wine, and I didn't realize how boozy it was, but like a 12-ounce bottle, they said that was equivalent to like 5 shots of liquor in one of their 12-ounce bottles of Cisco. So wow. But that was another one, and of course. Not super boozy, but another popular one back in my day was Boone's Farm, like Boone's Strawberry Hill and that. So I still have. But Nate, how about you in your young days? What were the trendy beverages?
I didn't start drinking until I was 22. So I think my first drink was Blue Moon.
So he doesn't know anything about those young party days, huh? Okay.
I think Zima was knocking around in the 90s when I was a kid, but those parties, I think it was whatever cheap handle of whatever you could get your hands on to make it to the party for my friends.
Poor reserve, Nate. Oh, Brian, how about you? Was there a trendy beverage?
Trendy really was all involved with what other people had. I didn't go out and get the stuff. I usually was depending on other people to what they had. I did see a fair amount of wine coolers. I did see Grolsch of all things, the swing top. Okay. I think people liked it just because it had a green bottle and a flip top. It looked weird and had a fun name.
Yeah.
Being in the Northwest, there was a fair amount of just Henry Weinhardt's Private Reserve, and I think back at that point it was even still craft. I don't think even Anheuser-Busch owned it yet, so it was a mixture of things like that. Definitely saw. I think I saw Boone's Farm a few times, like the larger bottles, but I saw a lot of 4-packs of wine coolers. That for a while.
I'm talking about your party drinks, man. The ones that people got specifically, the speed run drinks.
There was a lot of that sort of thing happened when I was in the fraternity days, and that was some of that was before it was technically legal. But that was a matter of somebody of age went and got a lot of handles of a lot of things, Everclear and all other stuff.
Gotcha.
A lot of fruit juices in those cylinders that you get out of the freezer section, and mix all that together with rum and Everclear. And basically, jungle juice or whatever you want to call it, hunch punch. I've heard
hunch punch, jungle juice, trash can punch, whatever you call it, right?
I know one time I was serving at the parties and I kind of enjoyed it. I was making daiquiris and we had a big old bunch of vanilla ice cream and just a ton of different fruit drinks. I was just running a blender constantly, and that was a lot of fun too. So we did actually class it up a little bit, but for the most part, a lot of Busch in those days in the parties. Like if it was beer, it was usually Busch Light, and a lot of coolers full of just random alcohol and ice. So yeah, that was kind of my thing. Individual little partying, people would run around with little 4-packs of wine coolers or Henry Weinhardt's Private Reserved. So
the wine cooler things.
Yeah, that's kind of it.
It sounds like in your heyday, Brian, you were creating Borg.
Yeah, basically. I mean, it was sort of along those lines. I don't think Borg really isn't that. It's a creative way of doing something we've been doing forever, So it's just a
Mhm.
different format. So there's creativity to
Yeah.
it, but it's not really anything that new. It's just we didn't have the little squeeze bottles of flavor, and
Yeah.
we wouldn't have thought of putting booze into water. Why would you bother? Just put booze into other booze and fruit juice. I'm like, why bother
Juice.
with the water?
Yeah.
Got to have the juice, man. That's
Yeah.
yeah.
Water
Stephen
induced
Pete said
booze.
it was Bud Dark and pizza, and I don't
Okay.
even remember. I feel like I've heard Bud Dark, but only vaguely. So I'm not even sure if I really remember Bud Dark.
Somebody mentioned that in something I read recently, a Bud Dark, and I'm like, oh, well, I don't know anything about that. So I have heard of
Good
it,
old Bud
never had
Dark.
it.
Good stuff, man. Good stuff. Well, I am going to roll into our beers of the week. We want to thank our friends at the Nest for sponsoring this segment. If you want to have some fun and have a beer, the Nest does fun things like Friends trivia, guys, or they may have music bingo. Go one night and check that out. A lot of cool stuff to do there when you're enjoying all their awesome taps. They've also got wine. If you're not feeling beer, maybe one of your friends is like, I don't like beer. That's fine. They've got you covered. Good barbecue there, some fun times. So the Nest in Kennesaw, Georgia, check them out. And thanks again for sponsoring our beers of the week. So on tap this week, I've talked about the one I had a little bit that we're trying to figure the pronunciation of correctly, but it's Guller, the O with the umlaut, Guller Lager that I'm drinking right now, and that's pretty. It's okay. It's pretty good. It's not the best lager I've ever had in my life, but it's pretty good. From Raw Brewing, I have Saving Astoria, which is a goza with tangerine and blood orange. I'm looking forward into getting into that. That sounds like my jam. Something I'll quite enjoy. And I got a Jack's Abbey post shift pilsner as well. Brian, I believe you're doing a little Anchor Steam action over there. I think
am.
you had pre-gamed with some Guinness. Am I right there?
I did, yeah. I was messing around with some wasabi peas. I wanted to see what. I just wanted to drink the Guinness because it had coffee in it. Thanks, Mo Mike Nate, for giving that to me.
There you
And
go.
Mhm.
as a chaser, it was kind of an interesting experience. So yes, I did do that as well.
Okay, good deal. Sierra Nevada, flip side, a red IPA, and that's coming from their fan favorites mix pack release, right, Brian?
Yeah, yes, that's
All right,
correct.
good deal. You just talked about the Deschutes Black Butte 35 Imperial Porter with cherries, cocoa, and vanilla. Have you had that one yet?
I have, yeah. That's it comes in small bottles, so I've gotten into a few of those. It's quite nice. Yes,
Is
quite
it?
enjoyable.
Good
Yeah.
stuff. Good stuff. Nate has a homebrew. He's got a Schwarzbier homebrew on deck
Mhm.
today from Drowned Valley. He's got a Mexican lager with lime, and from El Segundo, Smooth Deep Blues IPA. So that is our beers for this week. Brian, I think we should just jump right into here. I think a good place to go is right back to the Anchor Brewing story, because after our show last week, we did have some new news in that. You want to fill us in on what's going on?
Yeah, sure. So there may be hope for Anchor Brewing. There are three San Franciscans that are taking a stab at saving Anchor Brewing from certain death, according to the San Francisco Chronicle. And each of the would-be Fritz Maytags has a different approach. The first guy is a serial investor. His name is Mike Walsh, and he says he would have bought the brewery outright in 2017 when Sapporo bought it if he knew it was for sale at the time. He says he's not going to pass on the opportunity this time, and he's going to put together a competitive offer very soon. He also lives 2 blocks away from the brewery, and that seems to be a big motivating factor. I think this is his local hangout, basically, and he doesn't want to see it go away. He set up the website raisingtheanchor.com, which will give people an opportunity to get in as an investor in this. And he's also been in contact with Narragansett, who are the creators of that online petition to save Anchor. And I forget the exact name of it. I think it is just like Save
Have we
Anchor
talked
Brewing or
about the
something like that.
petition yet, Brian? And I asked that because you said creators of that petition. I don't think we've mentioned that yet.
You know what? I thought, you know what? It's possible we didn't. I think that may have come out after we did the show last week. So yeah, there's a what is it? Petition.org. I don't have the exact URL here, but the guy who took over Narragansett not long ago has ideas. He doesn't want this going away, and he wants to be involved in it. He's trying to figure out who else is into it. He wants to get kind of people's interest in awareness up, and he's got. I think he had wild ideas in quotes, and he's looking into. So Yes, I think it's like was it petition.org? Do you know if that's the website? I think that's it.
I can't remember which one it is. Okay, change.org.
Change.org. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, Nate, will you find that link and put it in our chats there? So if you follow us on the socials there, you can get that link. And if I remember, Brian, there's not really necessarily a goal of the petition, more of a show of support, correct?
Exactly. I think it's kind of a little bit of a gauge to see how interested the public is and how, vested they are in the brand and keeping it alive, to kind of gauge whether or not it would be worth further exploration into, like, let's put some money down. Let's do something in reality. So I haven't checked in on it. I did sign the petition because, I mean, I want Anchor to stick around. I've been revisiting the beers for the past week, and man, I love Steam. It's been a while. I love the porter. The porter is fantastic, and I think it's forgotten about. It's such a great beer. But so this Mike Walsh guy I was talking about, he's been talking with them, in communications with them. So there's a possibility there'd be some sort of a partnership between the two, maybe, to bring back Anchor. And if he is successful, he's talking about when he takes over, only producing the steam beer to start, it kind of like whittling it all way back, cutting back to just like the core beer there. So that'll be interesting. Did you have something else you wanted to throw in there?
No. Did I? Okay. I don't.
Okay, I thought I heard you say something. Another guy who with an idea to save Anchor is a guy named Steve Matthews. He wants to get together a group of his friends in technology and restart the brewery as part of a reality TV show that he's tentatively going to call "How Hard Could It Be?" And the premise of the show would be, this is his quote: "How many tech idiots does it take to run a brewery?" And I kind of like this idea, but it sounds iffy to me because how likely that sounds like a drunken idea I might have, but with the right context and the right money and the right interest, it might happen. Who knows?
I don't like it. I don't like that one. I think it is disrespectful to the brewery to turn it into a reality show spectacle. And I just used this GIF the other day, this meme the other day for a chat on Twitter, but The Godfather, look how they massacred my boy.
Oh,
that's kind of what I feel like with this. Is it's kind of hitting that. And it sounds like a guy who wants to try and think of a way he can turn a buck on this, turn it into a reality show, make some money. I would much rather see someone who truly cared about Anchor, and maybe he does. I don't know anything about this guy, but I can say by his idea, it doesn't sound like that.
So he was coming up with the what he said. Now, obviously, it might just be a big possibility of a money grab, but what he said is he's looking for a way to make this possible and defray some of the risk and the costs by spreading it out amongst a bunch of people and then turning it into something else. So if the brewery did fail, at least they've got a TV show to make up for some of the loss. But I get what you're saying. It does. Yes. It's not a super respectful way to treat, a legend like Anchor. So I get that. I do get that. I hadn't thought of that angle, but I don't think that's going to happen. Of all of the ones I've looked through in this story, I don't think that's going to happen. There's one other guy, Kyle Withcomb, and he's looking at just buying Anchor outright. He sold a juice company not long ago, so he's probably not going to do any crowdsourcing or crowdfunding. I think he would just buy it. He said he would transition away from the unpopular 2021 rebrand, which the bottle I'm holding in my hand right now has that rebranded look. Go back to either something that's reminiscent of the classics. I don't know if it would be identical to that. And he would focus heavily on steam beer also. And he would do a better job of telling the story of the beer, the unique process, and kind of romanticizing it more in marketing, something he says that the company before now has never really done a good job of. Steam beer should be more of a legend and should be better known and loved by the public. So whatever happens with this, people outside of San Francisco, so hard to say, are unlikely to see Anchor anytime soon. Everybody seems to be talking about keeping it very low distribution and maybe just local. So that's what we're looking at. That
sounds like a good idea. Walk before you run kind of thing.
Yeah.
Let's we got a brewery in trouble here. Let's save it first. Let's get things going, and then we can see what they do. If they bring back Steam and Christmas Ale, I think we can make it through there. So Brian, last week when we were talking about this story, we asked our listeners because we were trying to think of any other famous kind of brewery rebirths here. If anybody had closed because we've seen some situations here with our local breweries where they're like, yeah, we're going to close here, but we'll reopen in another location or something along those lines. And so far that hasn't worked. There are a few, pretty well known ones. You mentioned Narragansett. I think that, that was closed for, I think, over 20 years or close to 20 years there for a while before some people passionate about the brand, came back and restarted that one. And I believe the guy that is championing the petition, he's done that before. He's like, hey, we were brought back, Anchor deserves a chance as well there. So Josh Arno from Abomination Brewing dropped me a message and reminded me that Weyerbacher essentially was one that they filed bankruptcy twice within a few years and they were brought back there. So, and again, another one, man, I hate hearing these stories because I think, well, yeah, I know I'm part of the problem. I love some of Weyerbacher's beers, but I don't buy them that often. I don't even know if they're coming here right now. Do you know if we get them on shelves here locally?
I don't think I've seen any Weyerbacher that wasn't like 4 or 5 years old. I've seen a few of the fun variants of the various stouts they used to do, but yeah, I didn't I'd forgot. I knew they had like a period of closure. Didn't realize they'd gone through twice. I guess I've forgotten that.
Yeah,
so
they did.
That's been rough. And man, I love that Sunday morning stout they did. Man,
delicious and good, as we say, a good PPO on that one. Good price per ounce.
Exactly.
On those
the
Weyerbacher
best
beers.
PPO. Unfortunately, too good. It turns out too good.
It is. Yes. And one I can't believe I didn't think of when we were talking last week, but Celis Brewery and Celis. Basically they brought wit beer to Peter Celis brought wit beer to America with the Celis White. And he had been with Hoegaarden, and that was a popular early craft beer, probably the same era of Anchor. Anchor and Celis were a couple that were out there. So they've been through a few closures, back and forth, moves, new owners and that. But they are currently, the brewery is operating in Austin, Texas, and is owned by Christine Celis. So back in the family there, operating in Austin. And that's another one. So yeah, at least a few have risen from the ashes there, so to speak.
It's possible. Yeah. I think that I think something is going to happen. The worst case scenario that I think a lot of people suspect will happen is somebody will eventually buy the intellectual property, and these beers will be produced under that name, possibly close to the recipe, but it won't be the same. I think there's so much oddity to making steam beer that I think it would be you couldn't make it the same outside of that facility. I think that beer is synonymous with the actual grounds and all of the brewery setup, basically. Like, who's going to do that? Who's going to set that up? Like, who's going
to do it?
No, nobody's going to do that. It's possible. So these beers may return, but they're not going to be the same. So that's what a lot of people think. I hope that somebody buys the entire facility and gets it going, keeps everything running. As much as they can, keep the people that have made it what it is, keep them there too. I don't know how possible that is. I would assume that they'd want to, but I don't know. Yeah.
Who knows? We'll see, man. We wish them luck. And Brian, it's just something that anybody who's been into craft beer for a while, Anchor's got a place in your heart and soul there. Whether you drink a ton of them or not, just what they stood for, the story of Fritz Maytag saving them and all that. Anchor steam beer, it's just it's a little part of history there, man. A little part of history.
Indeed.
Absolutely. Well, Nate, are you going to share with us about these beer cocktails, man? Because I know you are our cocktail connoisseur here, and survey says that they're on the rise.
Yeah, so there's about 40% of people who ordinarily prefer either beer or cocktails opting to try a beer margarita in the last 3 months. And that's really just adding Corona to, or any sort of light lager to your margarita. But an even larger percentage of people have expressed interest in trying a beer margarita in the future. So they're interested. They're testing the waters out, seeing what they think about it. But 60% of those surveyed also expressed interest in trying a Shandy, Radler, or Michelada, which, Tim, we know you're a huge
I'm on
Michelada
it.
fanboy.
Bring them on. Yeah.
But the agency that conducted the survey said they went on to say that restaurants are a key channel for promoting drink trial and experimentation. So the restaurants are really the driving factor on this. We're seeing people going home and experimenting, but it's really restaurants are pushing it, and you're starting to see breweries coming out with these cocktail inspired beers. And so I think that line in between beers and spirit based cocktails is starting to blur a little bit. And it's really exciting because it could be a really great opportunity for the beer industry to grab back some of that market share that they've been losing to the spirits.
Yeah, I agree. And now, see, something that I noticed here. These are what I would call the low hanging fruit of beer
Yeah.
cocktails. You know,
for sure.
shoving a Coronita into your margarita there, something like that. That's something that you can get it. They even make these fancy little hangers that you hang the bottle upside down so it drills down into their shandies and all that. But as we know, they're the gateway drug to beer cocktails. You know, you try something like that, just like Nate, you said in your younger drinking days, maybe a Blue Moon was your first one, and it introduced you to that. So I'm all for that. As you mentioned, I love Micheladas. That's no doubt there. I've talked about them a lot. So I've got something here that I have to ask people based on some research and that I did this week. Speaking of beer cocktails, for our Midwest listeners, how many of you know what red beer is? And how many of you drink red beer? So you may be thinking amber ales, red lagers, and that. No, that's not what we're talking about here. So when I was young, growing up in Nebraska as a young lad, my dad drank what he called tomato beers. And it was basically a macro lager and tomato juice. That was it. I think my dad fancied his up a little bit by putting a little salt and pepper in there. And every now and then he'd shove a celery stalk down in there, kind of like a margarita. But I found out because I started making my own version of that where I use V8 juice instead of tomato juice to bring a little more zest to it. And then I'd maybe throw a little Tabasco in there, or actually a little Frank's in there, and salt and pepper it up a little bit. And I really enjoy them. And I decided to dub it the Midwest Michelada because I was inspired by my dad's tomato beers that he drank back in Nebraska. And I got to thinking, I was like, Midwest Michelada, that's just, what is that called? Like the M&M there together. What is that? Alliteration? Is that the right word I'm looking for there?
Alliteration. Two starting
I'm like,
sounds,
this is, someone's had to have said this before, you know, Midwest Michelada. So I Googled it, and it took me to a few articles on what they call red beer that apparently is popular in, no surprise here, Nebraska, the Dakotas, Minnesota, often seen at tailgates and also offered in bars. And this is just the simplest form of the Midwest Michelada, which is the tomato juice and beer, and that's it. But apparently one bar owner said that he would be in serious trouble if he ran out of tomato juice to make these tomato beers, and that it's only happened once apparently at this bar. But I guess this red beer is a thing. So I would like to know if you're in the Midwest and you know of red beer, or if you don't, let us know. But is this still a thing out there? Is this something that's died off years ago? I think the articles I found were maybe 5 years ago and such, but I want to know if red beer is still alive and well in the Midwest, and if you still find it at your bars and tailgates. So that's my kind of beer cocktail there for sure.
I'm gonna have to try this. I don't typically have any kind of just a tomato juice around. I usually, if I have anything, it's a Bloody Mary mix, which I guess basically would make a Michelada. I need to get just a basic tomato juice and try this out just one time to see what's the typical beer that goes into that. Is it just any macro lager, or?
I don't even remember what was popular back then. So I have no idea. I don't think I think my dad was a Coors guy or Coors Light, but that was probably definitely showing my age here. But, you know, Coors and Coors Light didn't come east of the Mississippi, I think, until the later 70s. So, but I remember that may be why I remember it, because I think it was a big deal to my dad when it did come, you know, well, that would have been west of the Mississippi, wouldn't it? So he may have got it in Nebraska. I'm thinking about Virginia. There's too much, Brian. No one knows.
It's just too much, yeah. So we have different regions that some places put pickles in beers. Some people put olives in beers. Now I know people put tomatoes in tomato juice in beers. There's got to be some other places where they, I don't know, slice up avocado and drop it in a beer. There's something. I imagine there's other things like this. Tater tots. I mean, why not at this point, right?
That sounds like a Minnesota thing there. Some tater tots
tater
in there.
tots in
So,
your beer.
yeah.
If you do that, let us know.
Stephen Pete's telling us Coors actually came east of the Mississippi in the early 80s, which may still fit, my timeline there, late 70s, early 80s. But Brian, let us say thank you to our fantastic sponsors. Tell us all about Truck and Tap.
Yeah, I always enjoy browsing the beer list on the Truck and Tap website, truckandtap.com, by the way. I like to figure out which one, the Woodstock, Alfred, or Duluth location, has a list of beer that best ties into one of our stories. It wasn't a hard pick this week. The Alfred location is pouring both an espresso martini, coffee stout. We're talking beer cocktails, and a spicy margarita sour, and they have other various kind of cocktail themed kind of beers. Like most of them are fruited sours and whatnot, but definitely the tie-ins there. And not to mention, just a ton of great options basically. So, but I noticed something I don't think I'd brought up when I talked about Truck and Tap on the show before. Side pull taps. Each location has a side pull tap, and as much as I enjoy a cocktail themed beer, I love a beer from a side pull tap, and I am definitely going to get a side pull Italian Pilsner from Tripping Animals if I'm there. I'll interrupt my cocktail beer consumption to do that. You just have to. So whether you'd prefer a cocktail themed beer or a crisp side pull beer or just something else entirely, Truck and Tap has got you covered. Swing by the location of your choice, get some great craft beer, and then grab a bite from the food truck of the day. So go to Truck and Tap, check it out.
It is the spice of life, Brian.
It is, in fact.
Also, when you're out there and if you're headed to the Battery, maybe to see a Braves game, maybe they're in town, they're going to play locally, maybe they're on the road. You know what? It doesn't matter because the Terrapin Brewery and Tap Room is going to be open and ready for you. They want to serve you. They want you to come visit them. Come to the Braves game and get a beer. Come just because it's a Saturday and you want a beer. But go to the Terrapin Brewery and Tap Room at the Battery and definitely check out. They've got the classics, the Terrapin classics, Brian, like Hops Executioner. And I'd say this is kind of a newer classic, but Los Bravos, you know, the Mexican lagers, I'd say that's already one of their newer classics. But if you're not feeling classic, man, if you want something a little different, something a little R&D-y, they've got that covered too. They have a 5-barrel brew house there, Brian, that they do their R&D batches on. So fun stuff. They've still got the Kolschorn that you and I have been talking about here.
Oh, yeah.
Which we need to get back and get some more because that was fantastic. But, we're talking beer cocktails here, and they actually have an espresso martini stout on right now as well. So you can go up there and check that out. So head to the Battery anytime. Visit the Terrapin Brewery Atlanta and get your fill of delicious beer and barbecue. So thank you so much to Terrapin and Truck and Tap for sponsoring the Beer Guys radio show. We really appreciate it. We are going to take a quick break right now, and we'll be back in about 5 minutes, y'all. Got to freshen up our beers. moist. Brian
The
said
way to
moist.
get
So
back in.
yeah, so guys, I have just opened up my RAR Brewing, and this is RAR because I know there's a RAR and Sons, but that's RAHR out of Fort Worth area. But this is RAR, so it's different. And there was a question on Twitter today, and I forget who asked it, or I would shout them out. But they're like, "What do you think of when I say fruit beer?" And I tell you what, before I give my answer, Nate, what do you think? Actually, you know what? Let's talk about this on the show. Let's go ahead and just get right back in here.
All right.
So,
all
right, you guys hold tight, and I'll get us started. Guys, I'm about to open another beer here. I have RAR Saving Astoria. And this is RAR Brewing. And I know there's a RAR and Sons Brewing out of Fort Worth, Texas, but this is different. And this is a Goza with tangerine and blood orange. And there was a question on Twitter today. I forget who asked it, or I'd give them a shout out, but they said, "What do you think of when I say fruit beer?" So Nate, when someone says fruit beer, what comes to mind for you?
I mean, I think of like a juicy IPA. Tim, you're gonna hate this, but my first thought when you asked me this question was Wicked Weed and Creature Comforts collaborated on a beer back in like I think 2017, 2016 called Juiceless. And it was one of the first beers that I remember that was touting, "Hey, we've got a lot of juice in here, but it's all from the hops." And that was where my mind first went.
That's what you think of when you hear fruit beer?
Yeah, fruity, juicy. Like I think flavor, not they added a bunch of fruit to it.
Can people's opinions be wrong? Because if they can, then your
it
opinion
sounds
is
like
wrong.
it's possible now.
Yeah, it does possible.
Sounds like
what
I'm
do you
wrong.
think of when you say fruit beer? And he's like, juicy IPA. I'm like, are you even trying, Nate? Are you even trying here? So
He could have said,
Brian,
like,
how about
Malort.
see? And Nate, no matter what your answer is going to be, you're definitely not going to say juicy IPA now, Brian. But what do you think of when someone says fruit beer?
I immediately think the Florida Vice, yeah, basically the fruited Berliner, the fruited Goza, and I saw your conversation. That's Don Tess, the Don of beer on Twitter.
All right,
thank
you. All right,
big beer writer, does a lot of stuff. Anyway, yeah, the fruited Berliner. And some people mention like creeks and things like that. I'm like, okay, you know what? That makes sense too. Not the first thing I think of, but yes, valid. So definitely. And to some extent, there are ales out there. Sometimes they're wheat ales or whatever that people mix fruit into, or like vegetables, and they're kind of out there. So like fruit beer could be anything from, God forbid, pumpkin to something else. Just kind of like a weird in between style thing. But generally, Florida Vice is what I think.
That's what I should have said. And I think you may have got his last name wrong because it's TSE, Brian, and you said Tess.
I believe he pronounced. I heard.
Yeah, he does pronounce it. Okay,
I believe he pronounced it Tess on a podcast I heard. So if I got it wrong, I apologize. But I think that's the way I heard him pronounce it. And yes, it's TSE. Yes, correct.
And that's that was kind of, if someone says fruit beer, I think of like a Goza or Berliner with like berries or citrus is kind of my thing. That is the typical, which I think that falls into what you're saying, Brian, with the Florida Weiss there. And then Nate's oddball self out there. He wants that fruit, man. He wants the juice. He's a juice head, so he's got it going there. But yeah, that's what I think of is and there's a lot of options out there for what you could think of a fruit beer. Maybe you think of a creek, a framboise or something. But I think just fruit beer in general, that's what kind of comes to mind for me. But as we see from the three of us, everybody's got their own opinions on that. But this one, the RAR Saving Astoria, is very nice. Exactly what I expected from, some tangerine and blood orange in a Goza. And I know this is what I want when someone says, a fruit beer and that. So good stuff.
That sounds good. Yeah. I opened up the Sierra Nevada flip side, the red IPA. This is a style I miss. The malty red IPA with the West Coast profile of bitterness to it, but it's still balanced out. But I love this. I'm drinking this, and I'm like, man, there's nothing like this right now. And I'm like, there's a huge hole in beer without this being there. But I get it. the only reason it's brought back as a fan favorite because people liked it, but people weren't buying it enough to keep it afloat. So that's the problem.
Yeah.
It's great. It has a following. I love them, and I regret not buying more when they were available. This is a great beer. I love that profile of an IPA. You know, the malty, sweet, also the hops, the bitter. Oh, so good, so good. That's all I've got to say about that. And
good.
It's
okay,
worth.
That was
It's
very
worthy.
eloquent.
It's worthy of the Teku glass that I'm drinking it out of.
Okay, perfect. You know, we saw that here with Exodus Porter. Another one, you know, talking about a beer being good doesn't mean it's got commercial success. Like they won a GABF medal and like 2 months later or something canceled it. You know, they discontinued the beer. So just because a beer is great doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to sell, man. So
the nice thing about that,
a few ones there.
The nice thing about that beer, well, the one thing about that beer is almost every time I've been to Sweetwater recently, and I've been a few times recently, there's been some variant of Exodus Porter on tap there. So I think it's made it to a point where it hasn't been completely discontinued, but it doesn't go into distribution hardly at all. But it is there in the tap room because I think there is enough people that realize, hey, we love this beer, and if we don't drink it, it's going away. So they know to go to the tap room. They know to drink it. It's frequently with coffee, which in my mind makes it just even better. But it's a great beer, you know.
It's everybody wins. We want to chime in here real quick, just add a little quick tidbit. Bob L., we appreciate you updating us as the New Jersey brewery laws continue to fight for that. He said, no good news for the New Jersey breweries yet. They're still waiting on the governor to sign the bill. Bob, please correct me if I get any of this wrong, but I heard that he was actually talking about vetoing the bill. But I also read that it may not mean that it's totally dead, but that he wanted to make some changes to the way it was done and do it differently. So it doesn't mean there's a total loss there. It's just that something has been passed. The governor could sign it and give some relief to New Jersey breweries, but he has not done that yet. So, Bob, again, please do chime in if I've got any of that wrong. We want to keep this information correct that we pass along here. But they're still fighting in New Jersey. Keep up the good fight.
Yes, and I wish I'd taken note of the article, but I saw that the governor was specifically asking for something to be added to the bill before he would pass it, and I don't recall what that was. And it did kind of sound to me like a way of delaying things because I honestly think dude is getting paid not to sign it, but you know, that's just
we know how those work.
Yeah. Allegedly. So I unfortunately do not have that information in front of me.
Okay. And you know what? Good time for me to throw this out. I actually got a text from Joseph Cortez earlier this week. Joseph is the executive director of the Georgia Craft Brewers Guild, and they're getting ready to make a hard push, y'all. They've got a media campaign that they're going to get out there. They really want to bring awareness to the issues. There's going to be some videos that come out from brewers saying why they want these laws to change here. You know, one thing that is being addressed in Georgia is the direct sales. You know, we're limited to 288 ounces right now per day per person, which is equivalent to like a case of 12-ounce cans. So they want to loosen that up. I don't know what else is in the bill. They were a little, they didn't share much more than that, other than there's going to be a big and aggressive push to get the word out about these changes and to bring awareness to the cause. So good luck there. Every state has their challenges, man, and some worse than others. New Jersey stuff is ridiculous. I mean, they're really strapped down so much with what they can do as breweries there. It's crippling. It hurts. And we've seen some of the brewers that have closed here in Georgia, they have cited the distribution laws. You know, this 3-tier system, the franchise law, has hurt them as a brewery. Mm-hmm. A distributor can be an excellent partner and help you to grow your brand, but if you don't have the right relationship with them, definitely here in Georgia, it can hurt you. There's no self-distribution here. I know that's another thing that our guild was going to look at, but it's tough, man. Every state is fighting for better laws for their brewers, and they deserve it, man. They deserve it. So it's just all good news this week, Brian. Beer festivals are on the decline.
Yeah. More great news. Axios is reporting that the craft beer industry is souring on beer festivals, and they're even going as far as to say, call the festivals dead, which may be premature, but we'll see. They point out that a number of big name festivals like Breckenridge Big Beers, the WeldWorks Invitational. I keep wanting to say international. The WeldWorks Invitational and the Oregon Brewers Festival have been canceled this year, and the Oregon Brewers Festival is on indefinite pause at this point. So. This is due to waning interest and rising costs, they say. Axios says other breweries have reported tightening economic conditions and fan fatigue. Others say that COVID caused some kind of shift in consumers that reset people's thinking about craft beer festivals, without specifically saying exactly what that is. People are watching GABF closely to see how it does this year, but it doesn't sound initially great, but I don't have any stats at this point in time to report. So, what do you guys think? Are beer festivals dead? Do you have festival fatigue?
I do, to a certain extent. For certain types of festivals, you know what? I used to love to go to the mega festivals that was pouring every kind of beer, and it may not even be anything special. There was just a lot of beer there. There was a lot of beer people there. But Brian, I can have a beer festival at my local store, at my house, with my friends. I can do the same thing. My personal opinion, and some other chatter online, I don't think I'm alone in this, is that the beer festival itself is not dead, but maybe the format of the beer fest, of the way that we used to do things, is dead. Good Word Brewing here puts on Little Beer Fest in the spring, and Brian, what's the fall one? I keep forgetting that. Le Bon in the fall. So the spring one, Little Beer Fest, it focuses on, lower alcohol beers. There's a band there. There's barbecue. There's other stuff going on. Le Bon is saisons, farmhouse ales, natural wines, oysters. They had like 4 or 5 different oyster farmers at the festival last year shucking oysters there. That's awesome, man. Count me in for that, So, and that seemed to be the main thing here. People want smaller, specialized festivals that bring more than just beer to the table now, and I think that's it. And those are definitely the festivals that I'm attracted to. Those are the ones that I enjoy. Now, we went out and we did Georgia craft beer festivals a couple of months ago. That was a great time, man. All Georgia beer. It's always a good time to go out and see your friends that maybe you haven't seen, that you run into at the beer festivals and that. But if I'm going for the festival and for the event, give me something like Little Beer Fest. Give me something like Le Bon. There was a Save the Wells festival recently in Asheville that just had just an insane tap list and that. And I think my opinion is beer fests aren't dead, but the old style mega beer fest may be. So
may well be.
Nate, what's your thoughts on this, man?
So usually when I'm going to beer festivals, I'm going with the Beer Guys Radio, so I get a different take on it. I only went to a couple of beer festivals pre-working for BGR, and I gotta say, I'm real impartial, like you, Tim, to the themed festivals, like the style that Goodword puts on. I've never had a chance to go to GABF. I've never been to CBC, so like these huge mega festivals that just seem so ridiculously big and honestly, like, unrealistically big, I'm just not into them. I there's gonna be so many taps and so many offerings that I'm never gonna be able to try, that I'm gonna want to be able to try, and I'm gonna be let down. I think the smaller beer festivals with, like, an actual theme, sticking in their one lane is the right way to go.
Yeah. Nate, you brought up a good point. GABF is still an experience. That's something that you go, not only the festival itself, but it's such a big deal that all the bars and brew pubs and stuff around there, but kind of stinks. We're talking about this, and Falling Rock Tap House in Denver closed, which was the tap house there. But, that's still an experience. And if you ever get a chance to go to GABF, it's one to do. And it makes me think also, Brian, of like Hunapoo's Day that we've gone down to a few times. And that is a larger festival, but it is kind of specialized. And that was a good time. So I think overall, just the Mega Fest is a little harder for me to get into, but I'll make a couple exceptions there. A couple exceptions.
I got to say that the one thing I've noticed about going to festivals years ago versus now, at least in our state, something that changed that I think has not been good for festivals in general. I think everything has gone VIP. They always want us upsell tickets for VIP. What the festivals used to do, which I really liked, is it was just kind of open, one price, everybody gets in. They had we had fewer breweries, there's more excitement. Yes, but the thing that they did is breweries would have their regular pours, but at certain times special pours came out. So when you went to a festival, you'd see the list and like, yeah, but who's going to be there? Then you speculate what the special pours might be. So, the festival starts at 1, probably goes to 4 or 5 or 6. I don't know what time, but at some point in time, there's a time where we'll tap this special keg, and then people just know to run and go. That was part of the excitement. They've tried to separate that out into like a special VIP experience, which I think maybe initially may have been attractive, but I think that basically makes it out of reach for a lot of people who would go. And whereas the old school festivals where people just have fun stuff at certain times without really any big announcements, like just surprises, you got excitement that way, and you had the chance of getting something really cool. And I think it's still possible to get people excited about something really cool that's pouring that maybe not on the list, and you just they have a sign like, hey. And people expected it, so I think they were more fun to go to as a result of that. And I think we don't have that anymore, so that could be part of it.
Gotcha. Yeah, I really enjoyed Nuit Belge when it was here in Atlanta. It's unfortunate that we didn't keep that going. They still do Nuit Belge, we just don't get it here in Atlanta anymore. But pairing really nice small plates with some fancy Belgian style beers, and that people would even get in a suit and tie for Nuit Belge. Not really my cup of tea for a beer festival, but it was a fancier beer fest, and it was a really good time. That was another place they did like an open oyster bar, so you could just go eat all the oysters you get. And oysters are expensive. Good oysters get spendy.
I'm just sensing a theme here. If we had more beer festivals with oysters, I think
that's it.
They would
We've solved
it. They would all rise from their grave. I'm like, all we needed was oysters. Who knew? Like, hey,
that's it.
We've solved your problems. That's it. Add oysters.
Give me a ticket with all you can eat oysters and beer. You know what? Wings as well. If I get all the wings I want and beer, I would be on board for that one. So I think
wings
that'd be a good bet.
Wings are the oysters of the field, Tim. So I mean, it just makes sense. Yeah.
It's the chicken of the cave, Brian.
That's right. So, the chicken of the cave. Yes.
Y'all Google that reference if you don't get it there. Brian, yeast is important to our beers, and a new discovery recently, correct?
That's right. They so Omega Yeast Labs, excuse me. Let me give the full name there. They have tracked down the gene for creating hazy in beer. Basically, they're calling the gene in the yeast HZY1, which I think if you're going to say is just hazy one. Hazy one, yeah. It was discovered by comparing yeast strains that promote haze in beer in their brewing experiments. They were using gene editing CRISPR/Cas9 software. I don't know if I'm saying that right. I know CRISPR's right. I don't know about the rest of it. So they took these yeasts that they saw were producing hazy beers, and they deleted that gene from the haze positive yeast, as they call them. The beers with these edited genes would no longer produce hazy beers. So therefore, that gene is responsible for their production of hazy beers. So that's cool. They know that. But what does this mean practically for the beer industry? That's hazy to say. A lot of people already knew that yeast strains were a factor in the production of haziness in beer. However, there are a lot of brewers out there that rely heavily on oats and wheat when they achieve their desired haze in their beer. So this could give them options that they were unaware of, especially if a list of haze-positive yeast strains are published. So brewers in Europe and the UK are quick to point out that genetically modified yeast won't do them any good because it's illegal to import GMO yeast and beer that's made with GMO yeast. So I don't know if any modified yeast will even be brought to market with new genes. But I think the additional knowledge that we get from this is a good thing. So
that's pretty interesting. Absolutely that they identified the haze. They have isolated the haze, Brian.
More importantly, that means that they can, without having to brew beers, they can test or look at all these different yeast strains and just basically put a flag or add them to a list. Like if you're looking for a hazier beer, you can use this one, this one, this one, or this one. And I want to say that, which one is it? Heady Topper? Is that the one that uses was
Pac-Man?
Pac-Man, Conan, something a yeast like that.
Is it Pac-Man or Conan?
I forget.
Maybe you're right. Are you right? Am I right?
I don't remember.
Conan sounds right. I think you're righter than I am.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people have realized that yeast specifically contributed to the hazy quality of that beer. So this is not a mystery, but it's not. I don't know if it's as well known that other yeast are capable of doing this as well. So, and I think knowledge is power, man.
Well, talking to Alchemist, they had mentioned that their beer wasn't even really that hazy compared to some of these hazy ales, today. And I think it was maybe London Ale was one that was known to be like a maybe a lower attenuating, lower flocculating yeast that leave more stuff in suspension there. I think that was one that was popular with some brewers there. So that's
and maybe we already had the information. Maybe the attenuation and flocculation was enough. But I thought attenuation was how dry the beer got.
It's how dry it'll get it. Flocculation is how much it falls out that it falls out of suspension there.
It precipitates out of suspension. So we kind of did have this information, really. We knew.
I think we knew what the desirable traits were, but I think identifying this gene as part of what contributes to those desirable traits, that's a pretty big deal. So. And like you said, now they can say, hey, this yeast has this one doesn't, or, go Frankenstein out there and start, making these genetic modifications. We're going to get one that'll literally be like a bowl of oatmeal, like thick beers. You want a thick beer? You want a thick stout? We got it figured out now.
It's Imperial Hazy is thick now.
That's it.
It's not the beer that's imperial. It's the haze that's imperial.
Imperial haze. That is absolutely it. Sure enough. I think that about wraps it up for this episode of the Beer Guys Radio Show. As always, we really appreciate you coming and hanging out with us. It's always a good time. Make sure to join us next week. We've got more hot topics to discuss. If you enjoy what we're doing here, we would love for you to support us on Patreon. You're going to get cool perks. We will give you access to our Discord server where we chat about all things. You know what? You'll get a vote on stuff like new T-shirt colors, Brian.
Yeah.
If you're on our Discord chat, if you're our Patreon supporter, you'll get a sneak peek at a very cool festival tent that we've got coming, Brian. So there's all kinds of cool stuff that happens for our Patreon supporters. But as always, thanks for tuning in. Have a great week. And don't forget to drink local. Cheers. Dun, 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 dun. So Stephen Pete did point out that CBC is a conference, not a festival. But Stephen, you can tell us that, but I've heard the way you guys throw down at CBC. So, I don't know if calling it a conference. That's what you guys tell your wives to justify going and partying for a week with each other. Oh, I got to go. This is a conference. This is a conference.
There's many panels.
There's, he won't do it because he has to bring all the Pete's along. Oh, no. Somebody has to stay home and run the brewery.
Yeah, that's right.
It's nothing but Pete's running the brewery. So,
yeah. And Stephen gave us the way it's termed for attenuation is the conversions of sugar to alcohol, so how much it will convert those sugars over.
Yeah.
Attenuation and flocculation.
And that will affect the perceived body, and the flocculation is things falling out of suspension. So we kind of had some indicators, but it's good to know what the gene is and be able to prove it.
We had basic inflammation there.
Yeah, it's kind of neat.
Your basic info. Awesome, y'all. Well, thank you so much for joining us here on the live stream. If you are a Patreon supporter, we're going to post the link here for you to come and join us for the after party and have a beer with us. We would love for you to do that. So have a good week, y'all. We're going to see you next week.